Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar here with Collette Bryson of Engage Life Coaching. My name is Karen O'Reilly, and I'm the founder of Employmum and Employflex. So we've been around for 5 years now, and we're all about flexible work. Primarily, we're in the recruitment business, and we recruit for all types of flexible roles. So we were around long before COVID and talking about flexible work and remote work long before the pandemic hit. So we're delighted to still be here today and still recruiting for all types of flexible work. So flexible work for us means part-time, job share, remote work, compressed hours, annualized hours, or anything that's not of a traditional 9-to-5 nature. But today, we're here to talk about CVs, and we're delighted to have our expert with us today, Collette Bryson. Collette had a very distinguished career as a solicitor for many years, and she branched out then 3 years ago to set up her own business called Engage Life Coaching. So she's going to take us through her top 10 tips on creating an effective CV. So if you're in the process of moving jobs or going for your first job or returning to work, and you may be looking at a CV that you built or designed years ago that's been gathering dust at the bottom of your drawer, and it's very out of date and you don't know where to start, Collette will be giving us her tips on how to rejuvenate that CV and make it one that will stand out from the crowd. So we're going to hand over to Collette now. And if you have any questions while she's going through her presentation, you can just pop, if you hover over the bottom of your screen there, you'll see a Q&A feature. So you can pop your questions in there and Collette will answer them at the end of her presentation. So we'll let Collette run through the whole thing and we'll have the questions afterwards. So over to you, Collette. Looking forward to this, and we'll chat to you afterwards.
Thanks, Karen. Just want to get my screen up first of all. Now, we should be okay there. Hope everybody can see my screen. So thanks a million, Karen, for that lovely introduction. And I have to say, you and Employflex seem to have been ahead of your time in promoting flexible working arrangements and all of that, because now here we are, and there's lots to talk about that now with going back to the office and all of that. So a different kind of horizon, I think, ahead, hopefully, where there'll be something for everybody, something that suits everybody in the future. So I'm here today to talk to you about CVs. So as Karen said, I've been a life and career coach for 3 years. So during that time, I've coached, I would say at this point, probably hundreds of clients, and I've seen hundreds of CVs. I would have seen CVs in my previous life as well as a solicitor, because I would have, I was in 2 small practices, so we would have done our own recruitment and all of that. So I've seen all kinds of CVs over the years. So as Karen said, I worked as a solicitor. I actually had 20 years under my belt of general practice, and I staged a career change 3 years ago. I was also a returner to the workplace. I had a redundancy in 2012 and I was out of work for about a year, and I went back to law at that point for another 4.5 years or so. I'm a mom, I have 2 teenage kids now, so I've been out on maternity leaves as well. So I've been in the job searching arena back in 2012, and then when I decided to leave the profession in 2017, I was kind of at a crossroads then, deciding what to do, and set up my own business. So enough about me. What I'm going to talk to you today about is obviously CVs. So before I get into my top 10 tips, I just want to talk a little bit generally about CVs and a small little bit about cover letters as well, if you're wondering, and I will take any questions at the end. So let's start with the basics. So what is a CV and what is the purpose of a CV? So if any of you know Latin, and I don't really, but CV, curriculum vitae, means the course of your life. So I would not recommend putting the entire course of your life into a CV. The purpose really of the CV is when you're in the job searching arena, your CV is your marketing brochure. So if you try and liken it to if you're in the market for something, a product or a service, let's say a new car. If you're looking for a new car, the marketing brochure could be the thing that draws you in, catches your eye. So the marketing brochure is going to look good. It's going to look professional. It's going to be properly proofread, or it should be. So it's going to be really impressive. So that's what the CV has to be for you. You're going out into a competitive marketplace to try and get a job. So you're going to have to try and catch the eye of the person who is shopping. And the person who is shopping is the person with the vacancy, and they're looking to fill a vacancy. So your CV is your marketing brochure. So it's got to say all the great things that you have, all the skills that you have, the value that you could bring to that workplace, your experience, your qualifications, your knowledge, and a little bit about you. So it's the hook. So the purpose of the CV is to get you in the door to an interview. So if you think about it in stages, the CV will get you the interview. The interview then is what gets you the job. So the CV gets you in the door, it gets you shortlisted. So a quick word about a few statistics. You'll find different figures for this, but on average, a CV will get about 8 seconds reading time. So if you imagine yourself as the person reading the CV, imagine you have a vacancy and you have, on average, 250 applications coming in for that vacancy. You're not going to read them all in great detail. You're going to be looking for something in that CV. And if it isn't there or it doesn't catch your eye, then unfortunately, that CV is going to go in the shredder. So they may, distill this into a yes, a no, and possibly a maybe pile. So you want to get yourself into the yes pile, because out of 250 applications, maybe 5-6 people are called for interview. So those, those are pretty challenging odds. So how does your CV going to stand out from the other 249, and how is it going to catch somebody and hook somebody's attention in the first 8 seconds or so? Could be 7, could be 10, but something like that. So a good way maybe of catching the attention is by using a cover letter. So I don't know if any of you guys listening have experience and what you would say about the usefulness or otherwise of a cover letter. I would always say, obviously, if the job application requires a CV and a cover letter, then you follow the instructions and you send a CV and a cover letter. If it doesn't specify cover letter, my own view is there is absolutely no harm in sending a cover letter with your CV as well, because it could be the thing that makes them pay attention or makes them look at your CV in a bit more detail. So if you are sending a cover letter, or if you decide to send a cover letter, or if you're requested to send a cover letter, what should you include in it? So a cover letter, if at all possible, should be personal. So try and find out the name of the person to address it to, and address it personally. It should be specific, especially if you are sending it into a large company or a recruitment consultancy. Make sure you specify what job you're actually applying for. Make life easy for the person reading it. If they're recruiting for 10 different jobs and you're not clear on what job you're applying for, you've got off to a bad start. So directional, and by that I mean your cover letter should point them to what they want to know about you and point them to those areas in your CV. So it could be, for example, that the job you're applying for needs a specific qualification. So you might say, I have that specific qualification, or a requirement might be 5 years experience in a certain industry or a certain position. So you might be pointing them to that. So you're trying to get their attention and say, hey, I'm relevant, you need to read more about me. So highlight any key items from your work history and state your interest in the job. There is absolutely no harm in saying in a cover letter, I am really interested in this position and I think I'd be a good fit for it because 1 and 2, maybe 3. So not too long. I think your cover letter should be contained to 1 page and perhaps 3 paragraphs, an introductory paragraph, a couple of things, specific things that you want them to know about you, and then a concluding paragraph saying, you're interested in the role, when you're available, all of that. Make sure your contact details are clear and correct on it. It should look the same as your CV. So same font, same margins, same style. So it gives a good impression of you. So there's no point in your cover letter saying, dear sir, I attached my CV, full stop. That's pointless. And there's no point in your cover letter either being too long and being a complete regurgitation of your CV. So nice and pointed. So that's cover letters. So back to the CV. So I really want you to think the next time you're sending out a CV, don't just think about yourself and your own work history and career history. Think about the person who is reading the CV. What are they actually looking for? So try and put yourself into their shoes. They have a problem in that they have a vacancy that needs filling, and you could be the answer to that problem. So think about that and put yourself in their shoes. Excuse me. So who is this person that's reading your CV? Who might be reading it? And again, you'll know, generally speaking, which one of the following will be reading your CV. So you could be sending it into a recruitment consultant. You could be sending it to a company directly that has a HR department or HR manager. It could, in cases of smaller businesses, perhaps be an employer directly. Or think about this one. It might actually be a robot. It mightn't be a person at all. So let's have a quick look at these. So the recruitment consultant has a job. There's a job there and they want to fill it. Don't forget that the recruitment consultant is not acting for you. You are not their client. Their client is the person with the vacancy or the company with the vacancy. So the recruitment consultant's role is to fill that vacancy or put forward suitable candidates for interview. So they're usually, doing a kind of a box ticking exercise, and they're usually only putting people forward that have the specific requirements that their client has set out. They are also usually commission-based, so they don't get paid until they place the person. And that's the answer really to why you mightn't hear back from a recruitment consultant sometimes. If they filled the vacancy, they've moved on to the next one. So you need to keep in contact with a recruitment consultant regularly to let them know you're still there and you're still looking. But they're really looking to put a square peg into a square hole. So if you're not a square peg, that could be why they're not putting you forward. But talk to them. They're a great fountain of advice. They're right there at the coalface, and they know what's coming down the line. They know kind of what the future trends are going to be. They're also very busy, and that sometimes accounts for them, not getting back to you, that kind of thing. The HR manager working in a company could be wearing a number of hats. So they're also a very busy person. They're dealing with recruitment, they're dealing with onboarding, they're dealing perhaps with payroll, they're dealing with contracts, they're dealing with any grievances or anything like that that goes on in the workplace. So they're very busy. So they don't want to be searching through CVs, looking for your qualification. That's one of the reasons why CVs only get a quick glance sometimes. So make their life easy. Make the information they are looking for easy to find. So similarly with the employer directly, this is a person who's running their own business and they don't want to be spending time in the recruitment process. It's time consuming for them, you know, placing an ad, receiving the CVs, vetting them, interviewing people. They have a problem to solve, they have a vacancy, they need it filled as soon as possible. So again, you know, they don't have time to be poring over CVs in detail. The robot, on the other hand, you could come across applications where the company involved is using a scanning piece of software that scans CVs. It's called applicant tracking software. And it is literally scanning the CV, looking for keywords. And if the keywords that it's looking for aren't on the CV could be dismissed before it even gets in front of a human being. So think about what the people or the robots are looking for at the other end when you're sending out your CV. And that actually brings me in then to my top 10 tips. And my first tip is actually about that, exactly about that. So edit your CV for each and every job application. If you have one CV that you've spent a lot of time on and you're really happy with, and you're sending that one CV out for loads of different jobs, you could be doing yourself a disservice, because that's the generic CV, happy and all as you might be with it, all the time you've spent drafting it, but it might not be connected to the particular role you're applying for. So one CV does not fit all job applications. So every time you send out your CV, and I'm sorry to tell you this because it's more work for you, every time you send out your CV, edit it or tailor it with that specific job in mind. So what I like to do, and I'm a pen and paper person, what I like to do is I like to print off the job advertisement or the job specification, and I literally go through it with my red pen or my highlighter, and I highlight those keywords, and I pull out the CV and I double check, does that word appear? And that's a job you should do each and every time. Maybe sometimes it won't need to be changed, but check it just in case. So try and match your CV to the job specification. Obviously within the realms of truth. We're not suggesting you put something there that you don't actually have, or make up qualifications or anything like that. But if you take away nothing else from today, take away this tip and the last tip, tip number 10, you'll have to hang on for that. So my second tip is to consider what to leave out of your CV. So again, pull out your CV and have a look at it, and go through each and every item on the CV and ask yourself, why am I including this? Is this adding to the purpose of the CV? Is this more likely to get me an interview? Or is it going to put somebody off? Or is it irrelevant? So a few pointers there, what to consider leaving out. Consider whether your address needs to go into it or not. Now, I'm not saying put it in or don't put it in. I'm just asking you to consider it. For example, yesterday I was talking to a guy who works in Dublin, but he moved to Wexford a couple of years ago, and he's managing the commute and it's absolutely fine. But he asked me, you know, should I put my Wexford address on my CV because I'm probably going to be applying for jobs in Dublin? And we decided no, he shouldn't, because an assumption could be made. He lives in Wexford, he's not going to want a job in Dublin, he's not going to take this job. So be wary of those little biases in the person reading your CV. Similarly with the next point, any potential discriminatory ground. So, you know, ageism, sexism, all of those things, unfortunately, are alive and well. Avoid at all costs putting your date of birth on your CV. stuff like marital status, very old fashioned. I've seen CVs recently saying, you know, marital status, married, single, whatever it is, nobody's business, nothing to do with the job. Anything that might put a seed of doubt or a little bias in the reader's mind, take it out. Anything irrelevant. So the fact that you have a qualification in something that's completely irrelevant to the job you're going for, does it add or does it take away? Does it muddy the waters? If it muddies the waters, it's not directly relevant, or it might put somebody off, take it out. Same goes with jobs. You don't have to put all of your jobs in your CV. So it's not your life story. It's not everything that you've ever done. Jobs from years ago are likely to not be that relevant anymore. Jobs that were short-term jobs or summer jobs or things like that, if they're relevant and if they're connected, you can keep them in. If they're not relevant, don't be afraid to take them out and kind of shorten your CV down. I will talk about gaps later on if you're worried about that. But you know, we've all had student jobs, we've all done various things, we've maybe had short-term jobs. Just an example from someone I know, had taken a redundancy or been made redundant a good few years ago, back in the last recession, and he found a job, which was great, and he worked there for a month, and after the first month there was no sign of his salary being lodged in the bank. And after a few inquiries and a few promises and all kinds of things, and he worked another couple of weeks, there was no sign of being paid, and it became apparent that this company was in trouble. So he wasn't going to work for nothing, obviously, so he left. So he had 6 weeks of work with this company, who subsequently did go under. So what's he going to say about that in his CV? So to weigh up whether showing a gap or showing the job was better. So at this stage, you know, he's 15 years on from that, it doesn't appear in his CV. At the time, I think he called it a contract work or a short-term contract or something like that. Is it the longer time goes on, the less relevant those kind of short-term things will be. So just think about it. References, I wouldn't use up precious space on your CV by giving names and contact details of 2 references. They're not really relevant at CV point. Your referees are going to be contacted if and when you get a job offer. So references available on request is fine, or even leave them out is absolutely fine. If they need them, they will ask you for them, but have somebody in mind. Hobbies, I've put a question mark because sometimes people ask me this, you know, should I bother putting hobbies in CVs? A lot of what you put in your CV could be a judgment call, but I would tend to say, look, put something in personally about yourself to show a little bit about you as the human being. But if you're putting it in, give a little bit of detail. Don't just put the usual kind of boring things. A little bit of interest can really help you there on CVs. So tip number 3, mind your email address. So take a second just to think about the email address that you're using for your job applications. Does it look professional? This is a statistic I find in over 3/4 of cases, an unprofessional email address can result in your CV being immediately dismissed, regardless of the content of your CV. And I've seen these email addresses over the years, you know, nicknames and funny things and rude things and all kinds of things. I've also seen, you know, couples, John and Mary at Yahoo or whatever. I've seen house addresses. I've seen dates of birth, as in, you know, Mary 1979. It's a bit of a giveaway. So it's a really easy problem to solve. Set up a new account, and it mightn't be a bad idea to have one for your job searching so that you don't miss any notifications or anything coming in. So it gives an impression of you, part of your glossy brochure, if it's an unprofessional email address. And just be aware that that is the email address that you're actually submitting applications from, that you don't fall back to your old default one. So just something to bear in mind. Tip number 4, make sure your CV has a snappy profile paragraph. So if you haven't done a CV for years and years, and if as Karen said, you're dragging out an old CV that from 10, 15, 20 years ago, it may not even have had a profile paragraph. Relatively modern trend, a little kind of introductory paragraph to you. But make sure you have one now. You don't just go name, phone number, and launch into your work history. So what do you need to consider in the profile paragraph? It wants to be engaging, and it wants to, that hook that I was talking about, to make the reader want to read on. So you, pardon me, you want to highlight your value and your best points. The key words, really important there, and anything impressive that you have, your key achievements and skills. Look at the essential requirements for the job. So if the job advertisement says must be a fully qualified accountant, then you put in your profile fully qualified accountant, so that they don't have to flick over to page 2 to your qualifications to see that you're making it clear that you have that. If you have any figures or statistics, they can be really impressive in a CV. They can really jump off the page and help you. So, if you're in charge of a budget of 3 million, or you're in charge of a team of 5, or you increase sales by 10%, something like that can look really good. So a nice snappy profile paragraph. It's a bit like your elevator pitch. If you were talking to somebody, you try and say, in a condensed way, as much as you can about yourself and your history. So be succinct is my next tip. Ideally, and there can be exceptions to this, no more than 2 pages. Nice and clean and clear, clear font, clear formatting, not everything shoved in together. So again, thinking about your reader, you want to make your CV user-friendly, easy to read. My own opinion, opinions differ on this, but I say nothing fancy, like tables and logos and photographs. That can sometimes confuse the scanning software. I think a nicely formatted black and white 2-page document is perfect. Bullet points are good because I think, again, they're easily readable. It's easy for the reader to scan down through the bullet points and for the relevant things to pop out. Be wary of waffle and jargon. So clear English. Waffle is, extraneous words. If you can say something in 1 sentence instead of saying it in 3, the CV is the place to do that. It is a skill, I grant you. It can be difficult to do that, but boil it down. Be aware of jargon as well. So, something that you know really well from your current job or your current industry may not be well known to somebody else in a different job that you're going for. So be careful of using that jargon and acronyms and things like that. Be clear. So if you've been working for 10 years on an ABC software system or whatever, don't assume that the person you're sending your CV knows what that is. They could be using the XYZ software system and they don't know what that is. So just be wary of using terms and acronyms that the reader may not understand. So my next tip is mind your language. So your CV is the place to be succinct, as I said earlier, but also to use really strong language. Don't forget, you're marketing yourself. It's your marketing brochure. So your CV should focus on your achievements. So what I mean by that is, if you use your CV to list your role and responsibility, that's not giving me anything about you. That's telling me the job that you were employed to do. It's not telling me what you've done. And that's what an employer will want to know. Well, what did you do? Because if you did it before, you're likely to do it again. So past experience is an indicator in this case of what you're likely to do in the future, what kind of employee you're likely to be. So focus on your achievements and your results. And you may be there thinking, gosh, I don't have any achievements or results. You do, of course you do. You just need to think about them and to phrase them strongly in your CV. So good, strong action verbs. So there's a few there: managed, collated, completed, negotiated, implemented, organized. Those are much stronger than saying worked on and dealt with and things like that, or responsible for, which you see down at the bottom there. If you even Google something like action verbs for CVs, you'll come up with lists and lists of them online. So choose the ones that are relevant to you. And I think a good little tip, rather than just saying you managed something or you completed something, is to add in an adjective. Describe how you managed it or how you completed it. So there's a couple of examples. How did I manage it? I strategically managed it, or efficiently managed it, or quickly managed it, or whatever applies to you. How did I negotiate it? I successfully negotiated it. How did I organize it? I effectively organized it, efficiently organized it. Think of a descriptive word as well. And add in your real life examples and results. So evidence and statistics are good. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, if you increase sales by 10% over 6 months, that statement, it's very short, but it says a lot about what you did. You might want to add in a little bit about how you did that. If you, you know, saved costs, anything like that. If you managed a certain amount of people, managed a certain budget, increased turnover, loads of things. Evidence and statistics, really, really good. Look out for repetition, using the same words over and over again. So you find a word that you like and you keep using it. I would even use the thesaurus on a Word document, just so I'm not repeating myself. Cliches, another one to look out for. The one that always strikes me as a cliche, I see it over and over again, is good team player who can also work on own initiative. And that's absolutely fine. And you may well be a good team player who can work on their own initiative. And that might be what the other person is looking for. But if I'm reading 250 CVs and they all say the same thing, it's going to lose its meaning a little bit. I'm going to get a little bit bored of it. So find a different way to say it to try and avoid the cliche. So you can say that in a different way. You can call yourself collaborative or cooperative. You can say you work on your own initiative, things like that, instead of using the team player cliche. And yeah, try and avoid this phrase, was responsible for. So somebody said to me once, just because you're responsible for something doesn't mean that you actually did it. So instead of saying, you know, I was responsible for opening the shop in the morning, phrase it in a different way, phrase it in a stronger way. You know, consistently opened the shop on time in the morning and, you know, prepared it for the day or whatever it was. So just want to give you a few examples as to how to strengthen up your language. So down the left here are some things, type of things that I have seen on CVs, and there's nothing wrong with them, but you could probably make them better. So responsible for budget, working with key stakeholders on projects, that's fine, that's what you did. But you could flesh it out. And the underlining is just my emphasis. Estimated and negotiated appropriate budget figures with key stakeholders, successfully delivering project within budget and on time. Okay, it's another 8 words, but it says an awful lot more. Team manager, also responsible for recruitment of team members. That's fine, nothing wrong with that. But how about changing it to recruited and managed teams of up to 8 staff and built strong team relationships, resulting in increased productivity of 8%. So you've figures there, you've a result built in there, and you've, a result that you've built strong team relationships as well as the figures, the productivity. Hobbies, what I was saying earlier, try and give a little bit more. So you might say you were a volunteer with the pack run. That might mean you turned up one Saturday 5 years ago and you haven't turned up since. So how about giving a little bit more? Volunteer with core team for local park run twice a month for the last 2 years. I know it hasn't been on, it's just an example. Or reading. Everybody likes to say in their CV that they like reading, reading, traveling and cooking. If I'd a penny for every time I read that in the CV, I'd be rich. But why not give a little bit more? Be prepared to answer in an interview, oh, you like reading, what are you reading at the moment? So in this case, avid reader who particularly enjoys sports biographies. Again, I was talking to somebody yesterday who is a ferocious reader, and he said he likes to read factual books. He doesn't like to read fiction. So, he put in his CV that he loves non-fiction books. In particular, he likes historical books and political books, things like that. A little bit more, shows a little bit about you. Work experience, generally, you're going to put it in reverse chronological order, or you might use a functional style CV, which puts your more relevant experience first. As I said earlier, not all jobs need to be listed, so be thoughtful about that. And if you've lots of jobs in your work history, you could consider putting them in groups. So putting a heading like contract work, and then you list maybe a few projects that you had, or various retail jobs, and you list a few shops that you worked in. Or what I've seen work quite well is somebody concentrating on the last 10 to 15 years of their work history, but before that, just putting in a little subheading, prior experience, and just listing briefly previous jobs, just to show what they had. So not everything needs to be listed. Don't feel like you have to give loads of detail for a job that you were in 20 years ago. So mind the gap. So if we've all our work experience and we have a gap, what happens then? So again, to mention or not mention can be a bit of a judgment call, and it could be a situation maybe where your cover letter might work. So you could say, my position was made redundant 2 years ago and I took some time out and I'm now ready to come back to the workforce. Or I've been caring for family members and I'm now ready to come back to the workforce, or whatever it is, if your gap is recent. So how long ago is your gap, and how long was your gap? So the longer ago and the shorter the gap, the less relevant. You may not even have to mention it. It may not even be picked up. Things like planned career break, traveling, study, you can use those things to explain your gaps. And they're normally, they're part of life. Loads of people have done that. Nothing to bat an eyelid at. You can also explain, if you like, if it was a redundancy situation, and you don't need to go into detail, and you don't need to be embarrassed about it or ashamed of it. It's not your fault. So try and get used to using a phrase like my position was made redundant, rather than I was made redundant. So what about illness, caring, child rearing, those kind of things? Be careful about that bias that the reader might have. So be careful about giving too much information or being too apologetic about those kind of gaps. The main thing is to be positive about it. You're here now and you're ready to go, and you're ready to join the workforce, and you're ready to hit the ground running, and you've no obstacles, nothing is in your way now. Number 9 is maybe a little bugbear of mine, but the use of I and the use of the first person in a CV, I would definitely try to avoid. It sounds very conversational, very casual. In your CV, you want to be using that strong language. So I implemented a new accounts system. Just get rid of the I. Implemented a new accounts system. Much punchier, much more succinct. And then you can add in, on time and within budget. I'm an enthusiastic person. Enthusiastic person who? So just review your CV from that point of view as well. And as I said, if you didn't take anything else away other than points 1 and 10, here's 10. Please, please, please proofread your CV before you hit the send button, before it goes anywhere. Again, I like to print it out because if you've been working on a document for a long time, you don't see those typos until it's too late sometimes. If you've been looking at a screen for a long time, you don't see the obvious. Print it out, leave it for an hour, leave it to the next day, come back and look at it with your red pen or your highlighter, or even better, give it to somebody else who hasn't been staring at it for 2 days. A fresh pair of eyes will spot any of those typos or grammar errors or repetitions or things that don't make sense because it's your brochure. It's your marketing document. Sometimes things like that can just put somebody off. So make sure that it's a proper reflection of you. Before I finish, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the layout of a CV. I see there's a couple of questions in. I'll look at them in a sec. So there can be exceptions to this, but very, very generally speaking, your layout will be your contact details, name, telephone, email. You want to make sure that if they want to get in contact with you, they know where to find you. If you have a LinkedIn profile that you're happy with, you can put the LinkedIn URL there as well. Whether you put your own home address, as I said earlier, judgment call. Then your profile paragraphs, your snapshot about you. So it can be a short paragraph or a few bullet points. And that's the key things that you want to put there. Skills I've put in brackets, and I've seen this look really well and work well, where people put a little bullet pointed list of their key skills. It can look pretty well. Usually then you'll give your work history. So the company, the position, and I like to put all my dates running down the right-hand side of the page so that you can see at a glance the work history. Bullets or succinct sentences and short paragraphs, focusing on your achievements rather than your responsibilities. Then you'll have your education section, your qualification, awarding body, date. BA Honours, Trinity College Dublin, 1999, whatever it is. And that brings your dates all down the right-hand side as well. You can put your education and training together, or you can separate them. So training could be in-house training or any other training that you've done. If there's something that you want to say that doesn't fit into any of the sections, you can put an other section, other information. So it could be driving license, it could be that you're fluent in French, anything else. You can put there. Professional memberships you can put in as well. And then towards the end, hobbies and interest and references available on request, or else no reference to references. The functional CV that I mentioned earlier will be a little bit different to that. You'll concentrate on your skills rather than your work history. So to finish up and to leave us a little time for questions, I just have a funny little acronym that happened to fit in quite nicely with my view on CVs, and it's an easy one to remember. Make it snappy. So your CV, nice and snappy and succinct and neat and all of those things. So my snappy stands for S for succinct, so not too wordy or flowery or waffly. N, watch out for things that are not relevant or not necessarily needed in your CV. So ask yourself for every item, does this need to be here? is it adding to my brochure? P, keep it professional, the language, the layout, it's part of your brand, it's speaking about you. P for positive, you've got to keep it positive. Your CV is not a place for negatives or anything like that about you that may immediately discount you. Imagine back to the car brochure. If I pick up a car brochure, it is going to tell me about all the bells and whistles that the car has. It is not going to tell me that 2 years ago these models were recalled because there was a problem with something. So nothing negative. And the Y is for you. The CV is all about you. It's your marketing brochure. It's how you're going to get somebody interested in what you've got to bring to the table. It's the hook, and it's got to bring you to the top of that pile, to get you out of that batch of CVs that have come in and get you into the yes pile. So it's got to be all about you. So I hope that's been helpful. I do see some questions in. Thank you very much for listening. Best of luck to everybody in your job search. And this is where you'll find me if you want to catch up with me at any stage, or I post little tips and things from time to time as well. So I see Karen popping back on there. I'll stop the share, will I, Karen?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Grand. Oops, sorry.
Super.
There we are.
That was really, really good, Collette. Thank you so much. And as a recruiter looking at CVs every day, I agree with every word you said. A few things stuck out for me. You said in your cover letter to state your interest in the job, you know, and that's what we'd always say to people going into interviews as well. Make sure you say somewhere along the line that you really are interested in this job and you'd love to work in the place, you love their mission, you love their culture, you know, and, you know, make sure that you do say that in an interview or on the CV somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I also like the bit about, you know, what to leave out. You know, we all have unconscious bias, whether we know it or not. Well, we don't know it because it's unconscious. So, you know, it is really important to leave out anything that might, you know, be a negative for somebody, you know. So it's
that impression. It's, you know, it's what you might be really proud of it, but it's what the person reading it thinks. Just an example that I came across maybe about a year ago was a lady who was in HR, and she did a lovely career in HR, and she was looking for another job in HR, but she had a qualification as a yoga teacher, and she put it under her qualifications section, and she was really proud of it. She loved yoga, and fair play to her. But we decided then in looking at it that we take it out of there and we put it under hobbies, because we didn't want to create the impression that she was only doing HR until her yoga teaching business took off, or that, you know, she wasn't serious about the job, or she wasn't going to be committed to it. So we kept it in, but we put it under hobbies.
Yeah, that's very clever. Yeah, and you know, some people looking at the, you know, it's very important for an employer to get the right person as the right fit for their team. So you really have to be, language really does matter in a CV, you know, and you give some great advice there in using action verbs and, you know, adjectives that will describe, you know, adds more weight to the experience that you have. Yeah, contact details on your CV, absolutely. But from a recruiter's perspective, my recruiter's hat on, I'd say, please answer the phone when we ring you. Like, this definitely applies to people who are less than 30 years old. They just don't answer their phone. And my own kids, I have 2 teenagers as well. They never answer their phone. It seems to be a thing. And if you're not going to answer your phone, at least have a message, a voicemail message.
Yeah, pick up the voicemail. Yeah, I have that problem with my teenagers as well. I know.
But when you're looking for work, and, you know, we're getting a lot of applications for jobs at the moment, you know, they're, you know, at least 5 times more than we were pre-COVID. Wow. If you're not answering your phone, we're just going to move on to the next person, you know. So it might be an unknown number that's ringing. You might know our number, but if you're looking for a job, answer the phone, really.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for a job and you're with an agent, put that number into your phone so that you know it's them when they're calling, because there's a lot of scams obviously going around. So you know to answer that call. If Employflex comes up on your phone, answer it.
Yeah, please. Okay, listen, I'll pop into the questions here because we're running out of time. We'll finish up at the hour. We'll just see what questions are here. Somebody's asked, I left a job so I could look after my mum while she was ill. How would you cover that on a CV, and what is the best term to describe this? Good answer.
The best term, I think, would just be caring responsibilities or something like that. If you're coming into the workforce now from that gap, I'd be inclined to use the cover letter to explain that, rather than putting it on your CV. Or you could just simply put a one-liner on your CV, 2020 to 21, caring responsibilities, or caring for family member, or something like that. Yeah, and just leave it at that.
You know, I suppose you have to remember as well, you know, that people who are reading the CVs in most cases are humans, you know, and everybody is, you know, has been thrown a curveball in their life, and they will understand that, you know, these things do happen as well. Like, so don't be afraid. And, you know, I would say, I would add to that, honesty is really important in a CV as well. Like, so, you know, you said there about somebody who likes reading or whatever, like, but if you are putting that in the CV as just a filler inner, like, make sure that you do have a couple of books that you have read that you can talk about, just in case they do ask you. You know?
You could be put on the spot, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just, you know, as an icebreaker, even, you know, oh, I see you like reading. What are you reading at the moment, or what kind of books do you like reading?
Yeah.
And it could just get the interview off to a bad start if you were bluffing.
My Enid Blyton books back in the day, mightn't cut it. Okay, so another question here. So I've heard since COVID that applicants for roles have increased, and that some CV readers don't even make it onto page 2 of a CV. Would you agree with this, and would you keep all the key info on page 1?
Yeah, well, I can't say for certain that they don't make it onto page 2, but I would definitely agree, put the relevant information on page 1. If there's something key that you have that they're looking for, put it, you know, I always say put it in flashing lights, put it where they can't not see it. So all the relevant information into your profile. So look at what's essential on the job advertisement and make sure you highlight that. Like I said, you know, if it's a particular qualification that they're looking for, and usually your education might be on page 2, make sure that they know you have that, whether it's, you could put letters after your name or put it in the profile. But yeah, definitely I would put the key information on page 1 and high up on page 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What we would recommend to our candidates as well is, you know, have a look at their job spec. What words are they using? What are the skills that they're asking for? And then, without lying or making it up, if you have those skills, get them on the page 1. You
Absolutely.
know, so, you know, and use the same words even, you know, that they're looking for, so they can look through and go, oh, tick, 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 yeah, she looks good, you know, or he looks good, and you know, we'll put that on the yes pile, you know. So have a look at it. What are they looking for? And as I said, if you have that experience and it's not front and center, make sure that it is, because
Absolutely.
That's going to catch their eye straight away when they start looking at it, you know.
Yeah, I heard somebody say that, like, even the top left of paragraphs is where your eye is drawn to when you're reading something. So even starting your statements off with the strongest item that you have, strongest thing you can say. So absolutely keep it front and center, as you say, Karen.
Yeah. And here's one now about what recommended font would you use and it's most acceptable. Well, can I just say that if there's 3 or 4 different fonts on a CV, I know a lot of people who will just, that's a no-no as well. You know, so if you make sure that it's all the same font and that the layout of the CV as well is good, you know, that it isn't, your dates aren't, you know, here and then here for the next CV, and, you know, the next job.
Yeah,
you know.
I always I justify the dates down the right-hand side. I would agree, use the same font and not necessarily the same size, but the same size for the same types of things. Your headings can be bigger or bold or whatever. Font, I'm told not to use Times New Roman anymore. It's a bit old-fashioned, I think. You know, you like to show a little bit of your individuality as well, but I would stay away from any of the unusual ones. So Calibri, Arial, anything like that that's nice and clear. the clearer. And use white space. Make sure there's white space on your CV as well, that you're not, you know, shoving everything, you're not extending your margins just so that you can shove loads of information in. There has to be some white space around it as well to look professional.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I mean, the information on the CV and the experience and skills might be absolutely 100% brilliant, but if your CV is 3 or 4 different fonts, layout is bad, you've obviously put in new experience into an old CV, and there, you know, the font is different, and even the style is different, you know.
Paste.
Yeah, that can be very off-putting, like especially for jobs like accounting, or you know, or anything to do with marketing. Like if you haven't got that attention to detail, you know, it's not a good start. Yeah.
It gives an impression. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the next question, I'm currently on a planned career break as I have caring responsibilities. During this time, I'm also studying to gain formal qualifications for my work experience. Have you any suggestions how I would word this on my CV?
Okay, let's have a look at that again. Planned career break as I have caring responsibilities, and you're studying. And okay, so a couple of things there. The gap you have filled by having caring responsibilities and studying. If you wanted to stay away from saying you had caring responsibilities because of the bias we were talking about, then, you know, you could just call it planned career break and studying. You can also put that in your profile, you know, that you're currently studying for X, and that you, you know, anticipate you'd have your qualification in whatever month, or, you know, whenever it's coming, so that they see. I think that's really good. To go back to education, it shows a good skill. It shows your willingness to learn, your ability to learn, and that, you know, you've taken action by going out there and going to get another qualification. So you could, we shouldn't have to, but you could dial down the emphasis on the caring and dial up the emphasis on the education there, maybe.
Okay, yeah, very good advice there, Collette. So we're coming up to the hour. There's a few more questions there, but we'll have to wrap it up really, because I know people have places to go. There's lots of comments coming through in the chat to say they really loved it and it was an excellent session. Great.
Yeah, this is one actually, Karen, that came up there twice, and it's about giving away your age by putting the date of your qualification.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously your date of birth, if it's not there, and they can't ask those things, but if, you know, my degree personally is 1995, so that ages me, I would stay away from putting your leaving cert or anything like that in a CV. If you've loads of years experience in industry, and if you have third level qualifications in particular, or further education, leave out the leaving cert. Judgment call again, whether you put the year in or not. If you're worried about it, just put in the qualification.
Yeah, I'd agree there as well. Yeah. Listen, Collette, you're a mine of information, and that was just a really, really fantastic webinar with lots of practical tips and takeaways. So thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome.
And as everybody who's on here today, as a give back to us, you might follow us on social media. We're Employflex, and Collette, you are. What's your handle on the?
Oh, sorry, I'm Engage Life Coaching. You'll find me personally on LinkedIn. You'll find me on Instagram and Facebook as Engage. I think it's Engage Life Career Coaching now. Yeah, those are the main places you'll find me. And I'm on the panel on the Employflex website as well.
That's true. Yeah. So yeah, if you follow us, we run webinars about every fortnight, and we also advertise all our jobs up there as well. So. A big thank you to Collette, who's giving her time pro bono today. So a big thank you for that. And we hope to see some of you at our next webinar. And again, you'll find Collette on Engage Life Coaching. She has a website there with lots of good stuff on her blog as well. So again, big thanks to Collette, and see you all next time.
You're welcome. Have a nice day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.